The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Well, this was interesting. CNN fact-checking Governor Patrick Bateman. Huh.
Interesting. What's going on there?
So, Newsom has launched this podcast. We've talked about a bit, and it's the whole predicate here is going to engage people with which I disagree to advance the national conversation about salient public policy issues and show how reasonable I am at an effort to rebrand myself in advance of 2028. So he's spent a good deal of time pretending to be confused about things that he vociferously supported just a few minutes earlier. And Aaron Barnett and Andrew Kaczynski, CNN, did a little dissection of some of the new positions that Gavin Newsom, Governor Bateman, has been taking. Very Kamala style, these 180s. For example, on Latinx, this is new Newsom.
By the way, not one person ever in my office has ever used the word Latinx.
So can we finally put that to bed?
Yeah,
we agree.
Where did that even
No more Latinx, everybody.
Well, I just didn't even know where it came from. I'm like, what are people talking about?
What are people talking about?
I don't know anything. I see nothing. I know nothing.
What are people talking about? Well, Andrew Kaczynski knows some people in the Newsom administration who use the term Latinx.
Right? Yeah, that's right. And look, these aren't minor shifts. These are progressive issues that Gavin Newsom used to champion until fairly recently. And now he's not just walking away from them. He's sort of acting like they were never legitimate with that clip talking about Latinx in the first place. But let's take Latinx. We did find somebody who used it repeatedly in his office. Let's take a listen to this.
I hope we can really paint a picture in terms of our consciousness of how impactful this has been on the Latinx community. The Latinx and black communities. You've got politicians that are banning not assault rifles, but the word Latinx. They're not even serious.
And look, Aaron, those aren't the only times that we found that he used it. He also used it a lot on social media. Look at a few of these right here. You see there, that is a lot of use of Latinx by him for somebody who said that nobody in his office has ever used that phrase.
Where did it come from?
Don't be fooled by Gavin Newsom, any of you, please.
The new Newsom on trans men playing girls' sports.
Turns out in 2014, years before I was governor, there was a law established the legal principles that allow trans athletes in women's sports. But the issue of fairness is completely legit. It is an issue of fairness, and I think Democrats have lost that.
It's something he inherited. He's an innocent bystander. No.
No, that's right. And look, in that statement, he's kind of making it sound like he wasn't involved in this at all. He's like, oh, it was in 2014, years before I was governor. Like, you mean when you were the lieutenant governor? When you actively defended and praised that law? And one of the videos that we found was actually him praising not just the governor at the time, Jerry Brown, but the California state legislature for putting that in place at the time. Take a listen to this.
Thank you for what you did on civil rights for students in our schools, transgender rights in this state.
Gavin Newsom on trans surgeries, including for inmates, something that bedeviled the Kamala campaign. You remember the ad. Gavin Newsom does. And his new Newsom's position is this.
Trump's for you. She's for they, them.
And
devastating.
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 But let's talk
and she didn't even react to it, which was even more devastating.
New Newsom has reacted to it by completely changing a position he used to hold, and frankly, not just hold, but legislated in the direction of.
Yeah, and it has been the law in California to allow transition care for prisoners since 2017. Gavin Newsom didn't speak out or say anything about it until now, 5 years later, when it became a political liability. And in fact, he signed a landmark transgender rights bill for prisoners that affirmed their right to have this type of care. And he approved a state Medicaid expansion that also extended gender-affirming care to undocumented immigrants. So his record on this is really not matching the rhetoric that he was putting out in that podcast.
So we know what Gavin Newsom is doing. What is CNN doing? For more on this, pleased to be joined again by Susan Crabtree. She is RealClearPolitics.com's national political correspondent. Her new book, Fool's Gold, The Radicals, Con Artists, and Traitors Who Killed the California Dream and Now Threaten All of Us. I think Gavin Newsom checks all three of those boxes, too. Radical, con artist, and traitor. Susan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, what do you think CNN is doing there? What all of a sudden, Gavin Newsom is getting fact-checked just as he's undergoing his Kafka-esque metamorphosis in advance of 20H? And isn't CNN's job to rally for politicians like Newsom?
Well, it was interesting because you had CNN doing the same thing when Biden was on the rise. Remember the whole hair sniffing, making a big deal about, well, he's too close to little girls and women. They do this because as they're prepping for 2028, they want to make the path a little bit wider for the more liberal candidates. I would put Newsom in that category. From all the research I've did, I live in California. I had to deal with his COVID lockdowns when he was shutting down churches, but carving out special things for Hollywood and keeping the liquor stores open, but arresting surfers. The guy is everything that he does is performative rather than performance-based because he's never had to earn anything in his life. So he just says these things. He doesn't make any changes in policies. And I go through in the book from his bogus college admission that he says was based on baseball prowess, not true, the launch of his wine business with Getty oil money, but he claims to be a climate change champion, to his political rise based on his connections to Willie Brown and his father's connections throughout the state. All were handed to him on a silver platter. That's why he thinks he can run for president via podcast while leaving his state in shambles.
Wait, did he date Willie Brown, too, like Kamala?
Willie Brown was the one that he owes everything to. He gave him his first job in politics because he actually had a fundraiser for Willie Brown at one of his restaurants, and his father was very tight with Willie Brown.
Oh,
wait,
you got to Willie.
Wait, I want to hear the baseball story. I don't know this in his background that he did a Biden. He's got a little fabulism in his resume there in terms of he was the baseball player of his generation, and that's how he got into college. And...
Oh yeah.
Wait, I want to hear about it.
Tell us.
Exactly right. It's sort of a little Varsity Blues-esque or baseball stolen valor. He says, and it's become an urban legend in San Francisco, that he was recruited by the Texas Rangers.
Oh, this is great. Go on. Do you know what position he played?
He's going to be the next Nolan Ryan. Yeah.
Right. So he actually, it was announced at a Giants game that he was not only recruited, that he was drafted by the Texas Rangers, and he never corrected it. But in fact, what happened is his dad was very good friends with one of the baseball greats at Santa Clara University, and they made the assistant coach, I talked to him, go and recruit him, and he played, but the baseball players on the team can't remember him at all.
Oh.
And so what I found out, that he's not on the roster, he's not on the official roster, but he says that baseball is what made him who he is, because he had a 960 on the SATs, and he wasn't going to a four-year college. So he was on the JV team. He did play scrimmages. He was a left-handed pitcher, but nobody remembers him. And what he really got him into college, you can't just wave this away like it didn't exist, was he had a letter of recommendation from Jerry Brown, who was was the governor before him.
Wait,
the father as well.
The one thing I believe about that story is he got a 960 on his SAT. I do believe that.
Yes. He does say he's dyslexic, and he wrote a children's book about baseball and dyslexia. So that's what he says.
This is great.
Oh, man, is that awesome.
Fool's Gold is the book. What about what he did last week? He sent 100 CEOs burner phones, prepaid phones, to tech CEOs saying, if you want to reach out to me, call me. And a lot of them just threw them in the garbage because they thought it was creepy.
Well, it's sort of like Mafia Don or drug lord behavior to send burner phones all over the state. I asked his office about this, and they said, well, he didn't pay for it. Like it was no big problem, that it was a very useful strategy. The reason why he's doing this is because the media out here started to wake up after the wildfires and the fact that he's running for 2028, and they started requesting his phone records. Because we have open record laws out here. So he's sending these burner phones so that he doesn't have to say who he's discussed things with. And, he didn't pay for them himself. They said this Protocol Foundation paid for him. Well, the Protocol Foundation his executive director is a longtime Newsom aide who he actually officiated at his gay wedding back in when he was mayor.
Oh my God.
There's no connection. It's actually just the Protocol Foundation. Well, the Protocol Foundation is staffed by and he wouldn't tell me when that staffer went to go work for the Protocol Foundation. The office said, well, we're just going to direct you to that foundation. We can't comment on it. When the guy was started, obviously he started when he became governor.
Man, he sounds like the perfect nominee for the new Democrat Party in 2028. I got to tell you, this is I'm sure you would enjoy it. Boy, talk about a treasure trove. You're going to be the Selena Zito of the 2028 cycle if he's the nominee.
Well, we do think that this will provide a roadmap for anybody who wants to do opposition research, because we did a deep dive. I work with Peter Schweitzer's group, who, as you know, unearthed all of the connections between Hunter Biden and China and many other politicians in China. So we found out he started a nonprofit when he was mayor called China SF, and he brought in more than 100 Chinese businesses to San Francisco. And it really, not only did it, they say that it boosts the economy, and it was supposed to go the reverse way too. But what we discovered that it brought a lot of criminals and Chinese gang members that bring in the fentanyl. They're responsible for the precursors of the fentanyl. And some of these individuals, at least one of them, was convicted of bribing one of Gavin Newsom's top officials in San Francisco.
Oh, this is great. So
this is getting better.
Any chance he ever took Eric Swalwell's honeypot Fang out for ice cream soda or anything?
We did not find out any spy connections, but we did discover that he was trying to get his wine at the same time he was doing this. He was trademarking his wine into China and sat down and did a pouring of this wine for CCP officials at a very shishi restaurant in Shanghai.
The Chinese French Laundry? Is that what it was?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this guy.
I don't know if they were masked or not.
Well, this is interesting though, and I know we've talked about this a bit before, but this new polling out that we've mentioned a couple times this morning is Politico is danger Will Robinsoning the Democrat Party. So Quinnipiac, lowest approval rating on record for Quinnipiac of Democrats when it comes to the Democrat members of Congress. It went from 75-21 favorable to unfavorable among self-identified Democrats in terms of approve of the Democrats in Congress to now it's 49-40. Wow. So a massive shift away from approving of what their party is doing by the rank and file around the country as they watch them with the protest du jour and they watch all these aspirants for the 2028 nomination out around the country pitching their wares. Very interesting.
Yeah, actually, the frightening poll that I saw last week was that Kamala Harris was the lead again for 2028.
Yeah, right.
Great.
And that Gavin Newsom only was securing about 5%. Now, that may be based on name recognition. I would hope most people knew who Gavin Newsom is, because he's going to bring his failed policies to a city near you if this happens. Our book is a bright red neon warning sign about Gavin Newsom, not only the failed policies that we all know about, homelessness, fentanyl, crime, it's the corruption that we expose in this book. There are some 25 individuals that Gavin Newsom appointed or worked for him that were convicted or sentenced for crimes or unethical behavior.
What do you think about Kamala Harris possibly running for governor of California? What are you hearing?
Yes, I think that she's the lead candidate, and I think she would absolutely hands down win. And there are about 9 million Republicans that are registered Republicans in the state, and the Republican registrations are growing across the state. There's been a concerted effort, but you cannot, in California, you cannot fight the issue because 2/3 Republicans are making inroads, but about 2/3 of it's a 1-to-2 ratio. So Democrats control the supermajority. It's basically one-party state. So you're going to have a breakout candidate like Schwarzenegger, and I don't see that right now. We have a sheriff running, Sheriff Bianco, popular sheriff. Yeah. He's the lead candidate. But, Mel Gibson is making some rumblings that he might run, but he has some problems in his past. So,
what about Dennis Quaid? I think he'd be great.
Dennis Quaid, from the Reagan movie.
Yeah, I think he'd be wonderful.
Morning of America. Well, I haven't heard anything about that. That is quiet. So, unless there's a breakout candidate, California citizens are looking at Kamala Harris for governor to succeed Newsom. So I'll have plenty of material, is what I'm thinking.
Well,
at least.
But now would that she run for governor and then turn right around in 2 years and run for president again? Do you see that possibility?
I do see that possibility. She does not like the fact that she went down on a very bad note, and she blames the short-lived campaign, not her word salads. Mm-hmm. She I don't think she's very self-aware. Either that or she thinks she can get media training to help improve her ability for her to publicly speak. And we have a lot of information on her as well. She said she took on the big banks. We found out that after the mortgage crisis, we found out she did not get the money to the victims. So she let Jerry Brown take it, and we've asked her about that. And she said, basically made excuses. We soft on crime completely. We have an incident in the book where we expose that she refused to re-prosecute a convicted pedophile who was spreading AIDS in San Francisco after a clear confession. It goes on and on. So we actually cut a lot of the Kamala material we had so we can bring it back for a new edition.
And you mentioned Republican registrations on the rise in California, too. And there was some demographic projections out last week, too, that showed California losing 4 congressional states at the 2030 reapportionment. And I just wonder if sort of what is taking hold in California, and maybe it's too soon to tell, but do you get the sense, because we're losing congressional seats in Illinois every cycle, but the politicians just keep saying Illinois is growing and that everything's fine, and they seem to be able to get away with it. And I just wonder if there is growing discontent that is palpable with the power structure in its current form that may provide, if not at the gubernatorial level, that may provide surprises at the state or local level.
Yes, we had a ballot initiative that was basically cracking down on crime, reversing policies from the liberal prosecutors, George Gaston in L.A., and Chesa Boudin was already ousted in San Francisco. It was Prop 36. It passed by a resounding 70% across the state. And it passed in every county in the state. So there are some, of course, we have wildfire as Exhibit A for the bad management and the failed policies in California. So there was a poll out last week that said that 48% of the state would elect a Republican governor. Now you just need a candidate. You just need a
Interesting.
candidate.
Well, speaking of the wildfires, I mean, particularly juxtaposed to Gavin Newsom focusing on his podcasting career, where is the cleanup and the response from the devastation of those wildfires at present? I mean, is there any evidence that Karen Bass and Newsom are getting on the ball on that issue?
Well, Karen Bass says she's streamlining the process, the permitting process, which is so terrible in California. But only 3 homes have been, from what I understand, have got their permits so far.
Oh,
and Karen Bass is actually over the weekend, told the victims that if they don't get their debris cleaned up, the city will do it. If they don't call the Army Corps of Engineers, which will do it for free. But if they don't do that in a certain amount of time, the city will do it and will charge them.
Oh, that's nice.
Unlike kicking people when they're down.
Yeah.
And down, many of them as a direct result of the terrible response from the city and the state. Incredible. And what about Karen Bass's future and the possibility of a Republican mayor in L.A. again? It's happened before.
Well, Ray Caruso strangely came out against the recall of Karen Bass over the weekend. He was the one that ran against her last time and did fairly well in such a blue city. But he's looking at a governor race, so it'll be interesting to see who might slide in and run for mayor. I do think they have a better chance, but I will say that LA is pretty pretty blue. And so the Palisades area, the victims, anybody who is touched by that wildfire is going to rethink management in Los Angeles. And they are. So you have people speaking out, celebrities and others. It's a pivotal moment for LA and the whole state, because that wildfire was not a one-off. We had one in Paradise just a few years ago that leveled this wonderful community, but it wasn't a luxurious community. It wasn't high-end. It killed 84 people, and the utility was found guilty of manslaughter. And because of all the donations that this utility showers on Newsom gave it a bailout when it was facing bankruptcy and allowed it to stay and pay the fire victims in a trust, but it was based on their stock, not on the amount the fire victims really deserved. So even some of those fire victims have not made whole up in Paradise, which is unfortunately named because it was leveled by that fire. So, Gavin Newsom says we no longer have a fire season, we have a fire year. Well, he's not holding the utilities to account and all of this environmental policy for years that has built up. But in our book, we really blame the utilities that are cozying up to these Democratic politicians. It's unique to California because the utilities gave Democrats in the state $200 million over the last 2 decades and $2.5 million to Gavin Newsom. In fact, they gave $700,000 to him and his wife, and so his wife used it to make gender justice films that she sells to the rest of the country. She screens them.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
You just keep peeling back the layers. Incredible.
Wow. I can't wait to read the book.
Susan Crabtree is a national political correspondent for RealClearPolitics.com. The book we've been talking about, Fool's Gold. Fool's Gold, the radicals, con artists, and traitors who killed the California dream and now threaten us all. Fool's Gold is the book. Susan Crabtree, the author. Susan, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's available on Amazon. I'm supposed to say that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Wonderful as always. Bye-bye. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
8:38, we'll be talking to Mark Trammell, who's the executive director of the Center for American Liberty. They are representing a woman that has filed suit in Port Townsend, Washington, over men in the girls' room. Good. 8:38.
But now let's head into the newsroom. Here's Nikki Whaley.
Good morning. It's 34 degrees in Chicago in the AM 560 The Answer newsroom. I'm Nikki Whaley. President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East say negotiations are making progress towards a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. Steve Witkoff told Fox News Sunday that today the two sides will negotiate towards a ceasefire in the naval war on the Black Sea. He went on to say that from there, a full ceasefire should be coming soon. Witkoff insisted his main goal is to end the conflict and stop the killing. He then went on to criticize the Biden administration for its refusal to negotiate with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Postal